Should you get a hair transplant without Finasteride or not? The simple answer is no, you shouldn't. However, in reality, it's not as easy. And that was also the case with our today's top 3 celebrities/athletes who did get their hair transplants without ever taking one single pill of Finasteride. And I want to share with you what were the consequences and what you should learn from this if you want to get the best result with your hair transplant in the future. Before we start, as always, quick shout out to our sponsor GoFiber. These are hair building fibers you can use to mask any thinning or patchy areas on your scalp to make your hair look thicker and better. So make sure you check out the link in the video description below where you can visit GoFiber, get a free sample of your choice and try them out. See if you like them. Welcome to Let's Get Hair, where we have been discussing anything hair loss and hair transplant related since 2017. Check out the link in the video description below where you can learn more about my one-on-one consulting services. Back to our first candidate today. It's gonna be LeBron James. I want to talk about what happened to his hair and why he should have been on Finasteride. It wasn't easy to be on Finasteride 10, 15, 20 years ago because it was actually banned by WADA, where they have like the prohibited list of substances that athletes were not able to use. It used to be a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor because they actually classified them as masking agents, so athletes were not able to use them for potentially masking some other prohibited substances that are not allowed to be used. But right now, if you type reductase or if you type Finasteride, we are not able to find it, and that means that they actually unbanned it already. But it wasn't so until 2008, 2010, I believe. LeBron James definitely did not take Finasteride. Maybe he tried it for a while and then he came off, I don't know. But what we can definitely see is that once he started receding, especially between 2005 and 2008, we can see the diffuse thinning going on his hairline, which used to be way more defined. And then especially between 2010 and 2014, there is a huge difference in a way his hair looked like, and he already looked more like a Norwood 4 by 2014. Now, 2014, what you can see here, is actually the time that I estimate that he had his first hair transplant done. I don't know whether it was FUE or FUT first. He had both, but his first hair transplant was probably FUT because it gave more sense to start with FUT back in 2014 than with FUE, since FUE has not been as, developed as nowadays. But what we can see on this image right here, which comes from 2014, we can already see that his hairline has a definition, but there is still some thinning behind it. It looks like it has new lining and framing around his left and right hairline, which he did not previously have in 2013-14. So that was the time he got his first hair transplant. It was, as I already stated, in my opinion, it was FUT, and then his another one was FUE. We can see it on his scarring when he went to the barber. There is the FUT scar marked with red, and then the FUE tiny scars, the dots on his back. These are the FUE, probably his another surgery. Now, by the time he got his first hair transplant, he thought, all right, I'm gonna fix the hairline, it's gonna look great, and that's the end of the story. But what started happening over the years, as we can see on this image, unfortunately, his midsection and crown area started to recede. And on the right image, you can see that he's able to mask it with fibers, but on the left, it looks when the fibers are not there, or maybe he sweat so much during the game that it just came off. And then we can see how much baldness he actually developed as a result of further hair loss progression. And that's why Finasteride is important, guys, because of course, if you by the time you're getting your first surgery, you are in your 20s, it may feel like you are just doing this one little area and the rest is gonna be there forever, but it's not gonna be the case, okay? So LeBron James is definitely one of the candidates who should have started with Finasteride earlier, should have used it, but didn't. And that's exactly what happened. Right now, I'm not sure if he has huge reserves to do another hair transplant or to do 2 more hair transplants. Maybe he has, maybe he doesn't. We will see how the situation with him will develop. However, we can definitely notice how he's able to frame his forehead much better with his new hairline right now, but the problem will be the mid-scalp and crown. Fortunately, he at least is very tall, and it's not that obvious when he poses for like images in magazines and some video shootings. It's not that obvious that the mid-scalp and crown are receding, because what matters is his front, and it's looking really good from the front. So maybe he doesn't care that much. Now, I need to also state that what we are seeing right now as of 2023 with his thinning on the mid-scalp and crown is a result of, having had a surgery 9 years ago. So that's actually not that terrible. Unlike with our next candidate, who is Tory Lanez. The rapper Tory Lanez, we made also a video on him, maybe you can check it out later. So he got his hair transplant somewhere in 2019, 2020. So it was only 3 years ago, really, and he should have used finasteride as well, but he didn't. So this was his situation before, and he wanted to create a better frame. His situation before did look also similar to LeBron James, and that was the result of the hair transplantation. Initially, it looked really good, even with the buzz cut, as we can see right there. However, what started happening, and we can already see it in this podcast, where you can see how his midsection and crown area is full of the wispy little, like tiny, fine hairs. And this is already a signal that, oh boy, you should get on finasteride as soon as possible. Ideally, you should have already been on it before your hair transplant. I don't know why he didn't take it. I don't know why he decided to do a hair transplant and potentially risk that island of hair appearance in the front. That was his decision. He got about 2,000 grafts in the frontal hairline based on my estimations that I made in the reaction video on him. It looks good also from this side on another podcast. But what started to be obvious already by the time he got his hair transplant in 2019 from the Breakfast Club podcast, you can see what I mean, the crown and mid-scalp. They're already diffusely thinning. They're quite progressively kind of diffusely thinning. The front looks thicker and darker. And I was already kind of calling like, hey, we will see what is about to happen maybe a couple of years later if he's not about to get on finasteride. And then we made an update in 2021 when somebody took a picture of him playing basketball. The mid-scalp and crown area is pretty much, they are 20% alive, so 80% gone. And it's very hard to recover them at this point to make it look so thick or as thick as the front. Now, I don't know if he uses fibers for his front because it's looking really full and dark, but the mid-scalp and crown are definitely have deteriorated quite drastically in a matter of 2 years. This is even worse for Tory because he is only 31 and this is his balding, whereas LeBron is 38 and he's also, diffusely thinning on the mid-scalp, which is not that bad. I mean, it's quite bad, but it's not as bad as Tory Lanez considering his age as well. So Tory Lanez definitely should have used finasteride, should have been counseled on potential risks, side effects, but also on potential benefits by his doctor and prescribing physician who could have at least said like, hey, give it a try and see how it works. Maybe it's going to help you more than you think. And if we take a look at finasteride has actually a pretty good response rate based on this 3-year study with only 1 out of 10 guys seeing like no improvement on finasteride, whereas 4 out of 10 guys noticing slight improvement and 3.6 out of 10 guys seeing moderate improvements and 1 out of 10 guys seeing great improvements. No improvement, however, means also no more hair loss. So actually all of these guys who are taking finasteride shouldn't be seeing deterioration of hair loss, at least for 3 years based on this study. There are also like 10-year studies where very rarely people see deterioration of their hair on finasteride, mainly because they're already like high Norwoods when starting finasteride, so they're already starting too late with finasteride. In that case, they actually see the deterioration more likely compared to somebody who's Norwood 2, 3, or 4 starting on finasteride. And then another chart is also showing us, based on this 5-year finasteride response study, it shows also very high response rates on the vertex and diffuse thinning, like on the crown or mid-scalp, 60%, 90% on the vertex. So if you start taking it while noticing your crown area thinning, you should have like very, very high chance of recovering with finasteride. So with LeBron James being our first and Tory Lanez being our second candidate, maybe you've been asking, who is the third guy? Our third candidate who decided to get a hair transplant is Wayne Rooney. We already made an insightful video on him, kind of breaking down his situation. Like, of course, yeah, he spent like $30K on multiple hair transplant, probably even more than that. We know that he had one hair transplant in 2011 and in 2012. So this was his first hair transplant. The result, the hair in the front looked a bit darker and there was some diffuse thinning going on the mid-scalp and crown, which he had then fixed with the second surgery. But even despite doing all this, we can see him in 2020 with like very light looking hair on the mid-scalp and crown. And that was the reason why many people were like, okay, what the hell happened? You spent so much money for those hair transplants, but it still looks like you are thinning. So he is not on finasteride. I think he did not use it, especially not for such a long time compared to David Beckham, for example, whose hair was way more important to him over his career, did also the modeling. It was a different situation, and that was the reason why I think Beckham did take finasteride for way longer than Rooney, and also guys like Robbie Williams, who eventually stopped taking finasteride because they had some side effects from it. But with Wayne Rooney, maybe that finasteride was still banned by WADA. That's the reason maybe he didn't take it, or maybe he didn't find enough helpful information that will help him to make a good decision as to whether to take it or not. And so I don't blame him. I don't blame that he didn't take it. Like back in 2011, you didn't have nearly as much information, nearly as many, YouTube channels, even doctor-based YouTube channels talking about finasteride and giving good quality information. That's the reason he didn't decide to take it, maybe also. But nonetheless, what happened, this is his hair 10 years after his both hair transplant on the left. And you can see how light it's looking. He still needs to use a shit ton of fibers. His crown is also thinning. Without fibers, the hair doesn't look very full. Most of the images are with fibers. He, of course, is forced to keep his hair very short right now to make it look fuller. His hair, when it's not fibered up, looks something like this. And this is with fibers, what you can see right there. It's looking better. In my opinion, he doesn't have as many more hairs available, as many more follicles. That's why he probably is not pursuing more hair transplants. It's looking okay, but yeah, he had a rough road, in my opinion. On some images, he's slicking his hair backwards, and it still looks like, there is little to no hair on his mid-scalp and crown. Yeah, his first 2 hair transplants, at least the ones we know about, did work in terms of like relocating the hair from the back to the front to make it more cosmetically appealing, because that's essentially what hair transplant is. The hair doesn't regrow back in the donor, so you got to be careful how to use that hair and when you use that hair and which clinic to do this. And answers to this you can also find in my one-on-one consulting service. If you decide to get on a call with me, I would be more than happy to help you out and support you on this journey, as I already did with close to 2,000 guys. And with that being said, I would like to end this video right here. If you have any more questions, put them down in the comments below. I'm going to be seeing you soon again in another video, everybody. Thanks for watching.